Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In our first story, we find out who gets the prize as the world's most unsatisfied customer, and we'll spice it up with a little revenge. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. If the food was good enough, this wouldn't have happened. I work at a high-end function room, so we do weddings, meals, etc. We occasionally do a tribute night where there's a big 4-course meal of really good food, the event chef has a Michelin star to his name, and the band doing music after, which are usually pretty good. Everyone comes away happy, customers like it because it's a good night out, management likes it because it makes a lot of money. Anyway, one night it's a big tribute night, 175 people, so we're full. I'm usually on the bar, but because it's so busy, I get roped in to help serving food. It goes off relatively smoothly until we get to one woman, let's call her B for B. B wasn't happy previously in the night, and she kept clicking at me to get my attention when it was clearly busy at the bar, as well as making the same drink for her 3 times without charging because she didn't like it. It was too busy for me to care, so I didn't think of it. Anywho, halfway through food service, when all the staff are really busy and stressed, she starts clicking me over and she complains that the food she has was completely unedible, despite the fact that she'd eaten nearly all of it. I replace it, and about 2 minutes later, she pulls the manager up, again complaining. This is the second course she's done this, by the way, as her starter was bland and had no taste whatsoever. We give her a bottle of really good champagne and tell her drinks are free to comp for it, which is rare as the owner loathes a bad review on an event night. Desserts finally come as B is holding everyone up by not letting the managers get on with their jobs. Everyone else loves the food except B. She storms up to me with a half-eaten dessert, demanding to see the chef and wanting a full refund for the night. I try to calm her down, but B starts to shout and people are getting pissed off. The chef comes out and B sprays him, criticizing every aspect that was wrong. Afterwards, she storms over saying she wants full refunds for her and her table. We explain that we can't do that as it was her company who booked, and only if the table was dissatisfied can we give out a full refund. We eventually come to a compromise of free bar for her table or anything but spirits and high-end stuff. But yet again, B still has a go at it. Every time she comes up, she buys the whole table a round of drinks. Jaegers, bottles of Prosecco, you name it. And making us redo it every time till the smallest thing wasn't right. At the end of the night, she came up to the bar with the biggest grin and said, "Well, if the food was as good as you said, none of this would have happened." However, unknown to her, every time she made us redo the entire round, we added them onto her tab as wastage, as she refused it with being quite expensive alcohol. The final bar tab came to about $2,000. When the company rang up the next day to ask why it was so high, we explained to them that they didn't sound too happy she was wasting $2,000 of company funds on proving a point. Last event night we had the other week, B's company attended, but no B. Strange that. And our second story. My revenge was fireproof. Okay, so I live in Australia in a major city, and I moved there to start studying at university in 2015. I'd lived in university accommodation since then up until early 2017 when I decided I wanted to live more independently without an official support network, the uni, so I made plans to move. It was a big step for me, and I was definitely nervous about the idea of moving. My parents were a massive help in getting me to understand how renting worked and what rights I had under a rental agreement, etc., and I can't thank them enough for that. I eventually decided on moving into a giant share house, about 24 rooms in total. The house was huge but also private, which fell under rental classification of rooming accommodation and basically had the same rights as an outright rental, although you had a single room with common areas instead of an entire property. So after inspecting the property as is standard, I met the house manager, who I'll call Peggy. She seemed nice enough and was happy for me to move in as they had a room for rent. As required, I paid for 2 weeks' rental as a rental bond on the lease, money used to cover any damage to property that was my fault. This bond is meant to be submitted to the regulatory board in my state, and they hold it during the lease. The spark. After moving in, I slowly started to realize the true nature of Peggy and her unprofessional behavior. To start it off, I wasn't immediately given a rental agreement to sign, legal document outlining my lease period, costs/week for my room, and any rules or bylaws. I wasn't giving a bond receipt either, which I later realized meant my bond was never sent to the regulator. After constantly nagging for a lease and bringing my mom into it, I was begrudgingly given a lease paper to sign. I also was supposed to fill out an entry condition report outlining the condition of my room before I moved in to protect me and the landlord from potential issues relating to new damages. Peggy's lack of professionalism gave me more and more anxiety with each day, keeping in mind this was my first real step into independent living, and I was also dealing with schizoaffective disorder, which exacerbated things. The flames. The lack of professionalism from Peggy continued on and on while I lived there in various ways, such as threats to evict for excessive noise. We were within noise curfew. She legally can't do that without giving us a paper notice to remedy a breach first. Since my bond was never sent to the regulator, my tenancy agreement was never formally filed either. This is when my frustration hit flame point. The blaze. So this is where the revenge comes in. At this point, I was so fed up with Peggy's unprofessional and malicious practices that I formulated my plan for revenge. A revenge to extinguish my burning frustration. It turns out that Peggy not only neglected her legal obligations in tenancy, but also fire safety. I took it upon myself to research fire code and safety regulations for rentals and accommodation. Turns out the house was an illegal death trap. In the most flammable part of the house, all antique wood, there were no extinguishers. The fire evacuation plans were out of date, house was remodeled, none of the hallway or designated evacuation stairwells had working lights, multiple smoke alarms didn't work, notably the kitchen ones, the range hood was regularly broken, the fire alarm system was a closed loop, and a key was left in the cabinet lock at the front door. As required by law, none of these problems should occur on their own, let alone all at once. The Inferno. After dealing with Peggy's bullcrap for 4 months, I thought enough is enough and decided I would anonymously contact the state fire regulator. My plans had a snag when I found out the regulator could only be contacted by post or fax. I know, WTF, it's 2017, who the heck still faxes? I went out of my way to sign up at least 3 free trials for online faxing before I finally was able to send a fax to the regulator. After detailing the problems with the house in my anonymous fax and leaving the address, I held my breath and sent it away. Nothing happened for a week or two, and I thought the fax might not have made it. But later I learned after speaking to one of my roommates that some guy came to the house and had a look around before angrily approaching her and demanding to see the landlord/manager and getting their contact details. The regulator heard my fax for help. Ashes to ashes. In the ensuing week, all the aforementioned problems, and then some, were quickly rectified. Lights were now working, fire extinguishers were present, exit lights were on, even things I hadn't noticed, such as exit path clutter, were addressed. I was fortunate enough to overhear Peggy and the landlord a number of times talking about the code violations and paying a fine which I can only assume was related to said violations, which was the icing on the cake. Revenge was served. This was a turning point in my life where I finally decided people who give me crap will get that crap back. I felt insecure and vulnerable, and this forced me to come out of it stronger. And our last story. Throw me under the bus, kill your career. Warning, this isn't a story about justice or of cleverness or of me being a bad A. It's really about a petty vengeance, and it's petty of me to have done it. The chance for vengeance really just fell in my lap, and I didn't do anything but exploit it. If I were a better person, I wouldn't have, but I'm not. Okay, having said all that, here's my story. Last year, I got a job in a company as a pretty low-ranked IT dude. I tried my best to learn, kept my eyes open, and worked hard, and got 1 promotion and 3 or 4 extra duties informally added on top of that. The higher-ups seemed to like my work. Everything's going well. One day, an order looks a bit messed up. I pointed it out, and this causes a big boss in the vicinity to take a look-see for himself. Big Boss starts yelling at people. I'm promptly thrown under the bus by the people actually responsible for this idiocy, and Big Boss calls me in for a talk. Well, I'm mad. Also, I keep records. So I spend hours going back over everything related to that order and assemble a timeline tracing exactly where and what went wrong and who, not me, was responsible, and send it to Big Boss. Here's where the real revenge comes in. The CEO and owner of the whole company is my grandfather. I'm the only grandchild. My childless uncle is also on board. My parents have their own careers, but they're also involved in the company. I'm supposed to be working my way up from the ground floor and also getting a good, honest look at the company and how we can modernize it. So my relationship isn't mentioned, and no one below a certain level knows. Well, once I proved to Grandpa that I was unjustly accused and he knows I've been working my butt off for the company, why not? The more profitable it is, the better off I am. So he's PO'd. They don't know it yet, but the people who threw me under the bus are never going to get promoted or get a pay raise. If they do leave, even better. But we're not going to fire them. They're going to have to quit. They thought that I'd be the one, as most junior, getting the stink eye and the crap duties. Actually, I think that one of my bosses listened to them and has formed a low opinion of me. So I've been chilling, doing my work, but no more than that, and at a slower pace than they're used to, mostly taking notes for future use, trying to see if anyone in my section is worth cultivating. Big Boss, by the way, will be doing fine. It's the boss under him, mine, who listened to the idiots. I even used to feel bad for them, knowing they had a long commute / hard home life, etc., so I used to go to bat for them with my grandpa, making it easier to claim overtime, transport, and meal allowance, and so on. Those are going to get yanked too. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.